Welcome to another Teaching Tuesday with Wild Blessings. I'm Holly Drake, and I'm so excited to share with you about the mighty chestnut and an amazing legend, an incredible hero in the plant world. And you're just going to be so blown away at what this plant does for you. And they're out now all over the place. So we'll be talking in great detail about it. But first, I want to introduce you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to play some music. Hold on a second.
Oh, well, bring Max over so he can listen.
She can come in.
Come on in, Kim.
Chestnuts roasting.
It's not Christmas yet, but okay.
Oh, good grief. Okay.
I don't think Jack is out.
Thank you. All right. So this is my beloved friend, Kim Chasteen, and we've been sisters for many, many years in Christ and raised our kids together. And she's helping me today. She made for us, what did you make?
Acorn bread.
Acorn bread. And she's going to tell us all how she did that when we do our cooking demo. But I just wanted to introduce you first.
Thank you, Holly.
And if you could stay here, because I'm going to have you read
Sure.
some things, not right this second, but in a minute. All right. And I also wanted just to, I forgot to start herbing around. We always herb around at the beginning, and you need to pay attention because you're going to go do this as soon as you're done sharing your part. So herbing around just means doing stuff with your hands. And Kim is a knitter and a crocheter and she just can sew anything. She's made many, many quilts. She's just the most creative person I've ever met.
Wait a minute. She's also made costumes
Yes.
for reenactments
Yes.
of the, what was our Sons of Liberty,
Sons of Liberty.
film episode.
Absolutely. She made all of our boys famous. We did she taught me how to sew. We did costumes together. We homeschooled our boys together. So we have lots of history together. It's so fun. All right. So this is the chestnut. And what I was doing yesterday is I was herbing around, cutting these up. And there's lots of ways to do it. You have to cut them before you roast them, or they'll explode in the oven just like a potato will. So here I'm just pushing down with a knife that's not very sharp, which is really kind of a stupid thing to do because you can really hurt yourself. So if you're going to make a cross and score your chestnuts, make sure your knife is sharp. But I found a better way. And so this is probably what you should do instead. So what I'm going to do is take scissors, kitchen scissors, and just putting the blade down on the ground or on the surface. I'm just going to score it like that.
Nice.
And then go to the other side. Because honestly, I think the knife is kind of dangerous. So, and especially if it's not sharp. So see how I scored it all the way around like that. So after you score it, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the process now for the steps of processing the chestnuts. First, you're going to identify the tree and get the nuts. And the best time to identify them is in early June, or late June and early July, when the flower catkins are out, they look like witches' fingers, and they're white, and they just kind of hang down like this, and they smell horrible. They're super pungent. So I want access to chestnuts, but I sure don't want them right on my property because having to step on this porcupine would be memorable. Anyway, but they're all over the place. And between here and 194 going to town, I have counted 18 chestnut trees just on the side of the road. So that's pretty exciting. And the way you can find them is in the early spring when you see their flowers and smell them. So anyway, then the nuts are coming out right now and they're all over the place. So after you score them, so the first thing you do, the first step is you identify them. We'll talk about that in detail when we get into befriending it. And then you score them, which is what Kim's going to be doing while she listens to class. And then we soak them in water. So you can see this one's been soaked for a while. See how it opened wide up. And the reason why you soak them is because you want that moisture, because they can get very hard when you cook them. And then you put them in the oven and roast them for 20 minutes at 350, and then you turn it up to 425 and roast it for another 10 minutes at 425 till they're golden. And so they'll open up just like this after they've been soaked. I've soaked this overnight. You should only soak it for maybe a couple of hours. Some people actually soak it in wine, which I've never tried, and I wonder what that would do to the flavor. Anyway, so that's what you do. So after you soak them and you roast them. Then you take them out of the oven and put them into a bowl with a tea towel, and they're hot. And then you just kind of squish that tea towel so that it kind of breaks the shell away from the nut meat. And then you wait about 10 minutes and then you immediately peel them, because if you don't, they will just kind of adhere back to the nut meat and it'll be very hard to get off the shell. So that's the best, easiest way. And let's see, is there anything I've missed? Oh, so after you've cooled them and shelled them, then you eat them. And we're going to talk about that and have lots of wonderful recipes. And we're going to actually make chestnut butter today, which I forgot to tell you.
No.
So you're going to help me figure out how to do that. I didn't even look up a recipe, but I just figured what I would do would be to take these chestnuts that I shelled already and throw them into the food processor.
Have these been dried?
I just did them.
Yeah.
So we'll throw them in there with some water and some probably olive oil and a little bit of salt, maybe some pepper, because I want it savory. Because Kim made this amazing acorn bread. And so I made lots of wild jellies. And so we're going to have peanut butter and jelly for lunch, kind of a wild fare. So that'll be fun. Okay, so that's my herbing around. And then I just want to say welcome. So welcome to all of you that are new. Welcome to Wild Blessings. This is just a wonderful community of kindred spirits that just revel in God's creation, and we rejoice in his handiwork. We love the textures, even the prickly textures. We love the colors. Kim made this beautiful bouquet, but you just played with God's creation.
Yeah, from your yard.
Yeah, I know. It's just amazing. All the colors out this time of year, all of the aromas and the tastes, the varieties are incredible. So what we do is we just revel in that, and I teach you what to eat that's free for the picking when it's out. So right now is time for chestnuts, so be sure to get out and get them. What else did I want to say? Oh, please comment. When you comment, it helps, especially on YouTube, it helps to bring more people to my YouTube channel so that they'll know that Wild Blessings even exist and they can learn along with us. And if you're on Facebook Live, that's awesome too. You can post your questions. I'll be asking questions. And if you can comment with the answers to those questions, please do. And that would be really fun. Okay. And then now we're going to have a wild tea time. So let me get this started. You're going to stay here because I have to feed you some tea.
Oh, yeah.
So what I did is I took the acorns. Last week we taught on acorns, and after watch that, I'm not going to go through how to process acorns because you can just watch that class. But after I processed them and got them down to a meal, a dried meal, then I floured them. This is floured. And then I roasted them into a dark roast. And so I'm not actually sure. I think this is the dark roast, I'm hoping. Yeah, that's the dark roast. So this is a coffee substitute. So the other day I went, and isn't that wonderful? Okay. So remember we talked about how this is a complete protein and it has all the amino acids in it, that 8 of them essential amino acids that we need that our bodies don't produce. This is good stuff. And it's also really, really good for a diabetic. So if you are a coffee addict, you might want to switch over to Acorn coffee, which would be a lot of work. So never mind. I would just do Dandy Blend or Dandelion root or burdock root or something, which is a lot easier. All right, but I did make it, and so we're going to have that now. So Kim, if you could put this into that water there and just let it simmer. Now, the reason why I decided to try that as like a decoction is because I tried it like a instant coffee the other day with my friends Lisa and Brian, and it kind of, all of the flour just kind of fell to the bottom of the mug. And even though it still tasted delicious, it was kind of a waste, I think. So I think making a really gentle decoction is probably the way to go. So if you've made acorn flour or coffee before, let me know how you did it, because I'm just experimenting. And then the other thing I'm excited about trying is I made a creamer, a pumpkin spice creamer with coconut milk, pumpkin spice, and I'll give you the recipes for all of this down below. But here's my pumpkin spice. It has in it cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, cardamom all ground up, and there's a proportions that you do. So I added that to the coconut milk. I added some maple syrup, and then I added a couple of drops of cinnamon essential oil, cardamom essential oil, and nutmeg essential oil into the creamer. So it's super good. I'm going to put it into my cow creamer. Isn't that cute? It kind of spits it up through its mouth.
Oh my goodness.
I love it. It was my mom's when I was a kid. This is the only thing Rick and I fought over when they passed away. So I got the cow. Pretty excited about that. And so that'll be our tea time, but it'll take a while before that's actually ready. So while we're waiting for that, Kim is going to read to us what Henry Thoreau said about the chestnut, and I'm going to give a little bit of folklore about it, and then we'll do our cooking demo where she explains how she made the acorn bread, and she's also going to provide the recipe for us, which I'll put in the comments below. Okay, sweetie.
Okay. So when chestnuts were ripe, I laid up a bushel for winter. It was very exciting at that season to roam the then boundless chestnut woods of Lincoln. They now sleep their long sleep under the railroad, with a bag on my shoulder and a stick to open birds with in my hand, for I did not always wait for the frost amid the rustling of leaves and the loud reproofs of the red squirrels and the jays, whose half-consumed nuts I sometimes stole, for the birds which they had selected were sure to contain sound ones. Occasionally, I climbed and shook the trees. They grew also behind my house, and one large tree, which almost overshadowed it, was, when in flower, a bouquet which scented the whole neighborhood. But the squirrels and the jays got most of its fruit, the last coming in flocks early in the morning and picking the nuts out of the birds before they fell. I relinquished these trees to them and visited the more distant woods, composed wholly of chestnuts. These nuts, as far as they went, were a good substitute for bread.
Yes, it's actually one of the nicknames is bread tree. And wait till you see why. It is just so cool. Thanks, honey.
You're welcome.
And then also, do you remember the poem about the village blacksmith? Who wrote that? Was that Thoreau? I think that. Oh, yes.
I think from author cards, I remember that.
Okay, cool. So I'll just read the first stanza of this one. It says, under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The smith, the mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and the muscles of his brawny arms are strong as iron bands. And it goes on to talk about his character, and evidently his wife had passed away, and he just sounds like an amazing man. But it was under a spreading chestnut tree that the village smithy stands. And the reason why is these things were huge. They were legendary. They could get up to 100 feet tall and about 9 feet in diameter. So imagine that. And I'll be showing you some pictures, some old black and white pictures of how magnificent and huge they were. They took up 1/4 of all of the hardwood trees in Appalachia were chestnuts, the American chestnut. But in 1890, the Chinese brought over the Asian chestnut to try to mingle it with the American chestnut and see if they could get a better chestnut. But unfortunately, what came with it was a fungus that the Asian chestnuts are absolutely immune to, but the American chestnut was vulnerable to, and it destroyed 4 billion chestnut trees, and it was just tragic. So I'll read some of the stories about that, which will just be mind-blowing to you. Maybe I could just read one of them now. So it was such an important tree for food and for medicine and for usefulness that to lose, here, I need that paper, hon. To lose the chestnuts, but they were all gone by the 1950s. And during the 1930s, everyone was really struggling because this was during the Depression, and they had so depended on these trees. And so farmers and their children would gather bushels and bushels of these chestnuts and take them into the towns and sell them and be able to get their supplies that they couldn't afford. This was their cash crop. This is something they could buy salt with and different staples that they couldn't grow on their own. And to lose that was a real blow. So let's see, some more things about that. Let's see. When the blight happened, they decided, everyone was saying, we need to get rid of them. And so actually here in Todd is kind of created because of the chestnut tree, because the Virginia Creeper, which is a railroad line, came through railroad grade road right along the New River, and it came right through to Todd. And Todd was going to be like the Boone of the area. Boone is the big town in the area. And Todd was going to be the big town. And we had hotels and all kinds of thriving metropolis. But in the 1940s, we had this horrendous flood, which destroyed the town of Todd. And so that's when they built Boone.
And destroyed the railroad.
It destroyed the railroad. But we still have the trains. In fact, I'll take some pictures of them and post them just for fun. We still have a few of them down by the River Girl and by the Todd post office. But the reason why the railroad came in was to get these trees, because they felt like if we could fell these trees, maybe we could stop the blight. And so even if you had a healthy tree, it was incumbent, what's the word? Upon you to cut it down. And so like, I'll read some of the quotes that people would say. Woodman, burn that tree, spare not a single bough, begged the Citizen, which is a newspaper in Pennsylvania. Even the Boy Scouts pitched in to try and save the chestnuts, scouring forest for blighted trees as part of a multi-state effort to create an infection-free zone. The combined powers of politics, of the public, scientists, and the governments weren't enough to save the chestnuts. The loss was stunning, both financially and emotionally. Efforts to stop the spread of this bark disease had been given up, the Bismarck Daily Tribune resignedly said in 1920. The paper estimated that the value of the trees was $400 billion as recently as the decade before. In ancient history, it was called God's Acorn. And in Turkey, there were extensive chestnut forests, both wild and cultivated. And there were individual chestnut trees that were more than 1,000 years old that are still alive today. And I have a picture of that in my slideshow. It's called the Etna tree, I think. Imagine the bounty that that tree has produced throughout its entire life. And early explorers De Soto and the colonists of America found these primeval forests of chestnuts. Early accounts describe the nuts were knee-deep during harvest time. Well, we'll talk about the limber later, but it's a really fast-growing tree. And so it says by the time a white oak acorn grows a baseball bat, a chestnut stump grows a railroad tie. So losing it for all of its economical benefits was really hard as well. Over 30 million acres of chestnut forests were killed in 40 years, much of the loss occurring during the Great Depression. So the impact on both the mountain people that ate chestnuts and the game that depended on it in the fall was doubly devastating. Whew. So what remains of these original chestnut forests exists today as only wood in homes and barns and furniture. So if you ever get a chance to go to the Elkland School of Art off of Treetop Road, the whole thing is made out of wormy chestnut. And so it's pretty precious. And what I'm going to do now, are we ready to drink our coffee? Is it hot, do you think? Okay, can you go ahead and let me give you a sieve so that you don't pour the grains into it. And we'll try it. Joyce, you want to try some? Whoops. Can't find my little, here it is.
Nice.
Okay, just stick that in there. Oh, let's review our verse. It says, they will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. So thank you for all of you that participated with Acorn recipes. Barbara, you are our contest winner. So I'm so excited. I can hardly wait to go foraging with you. And there's a lot of chestnuts that we can get among lots of other things as well. So I'm going to try mine. Jace, do you want to try it with the pumpkin spice latte?
Well, sure, if you got some for
Yeah.
me. I'd be glad to.
Okay, why don't you come over here so we can see what you think of it?
Do you have another cup, Holly?
Yeah, they're right above there.
Do you want to know what I think of it?
Sure, you can be honest.
Way too much and way too full.
All right, just give him a little bit because he doesn't want that much. This will be mine then because I'll drink it for sure.
Yeah.
And I need a spoon.
Yeah, just 30. Too much.
Too much?
So I'm sure you're probably asking, well, Holly, if the chestnuts are all gone, then why do you have so many on your counter and why are you holding a chestnut branch? So these are actually Chinese chestnuts.
So this is Acorn.
This is an acorn.
This is Acorn coffee. Oh, you should try it with some molasses or something like that.
Well, let's
Or
put a
you wanna
little
do
bit-
that?
I'll
Yeah.
put a little bit of this pumpkin spice.
Do you want some
Yeah, sure.
molasses to try
No,
it?
I'll try this.
Oh, you will?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There we go.
Yeah, let's all try it together. We have to click our glasses.
Um,
We do a wild tea every week.
I love it. I love the cow.
I don't know. Milk's not supposed to come out of the cow's mouth, though. It's a little.
Well, I think it would be a little weird coming out of
So we
the
don't have to
other
cover
end.
it.
Yeah, well,
Whoa.
okay, here we go.
Okay, blessings.
Nice.
The pumpkin spice
It's very
has a
smooth.
good flavor to it.
I like it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
Well,
It's mild.
Watch my class and learn what acorns do for you, and you'll think, oh, I really want to
Well,
drink
you know,
that.
Probably a lot of gourmet coffees have nuts in them. You'll see like a nutty flavor when you
Yeah.
go to buy,
Yes.
hazelnut flavoring,
Yes.
different nut flavoring. So maybe it'll take off in the coffee shop. Acorn.
Well, it would be a lot of work to do. But I think what I would do next time is I would definitely roast it longer. This was just kind of an experiment.
Very nice.
But yeah, go ahead and enjoy that. And then you can go ahead and tell us now, if you don't mind, about how you made the acorn bread. And then we'll get
Okay.
into our class.
So Holly asked me last week if I'd be willing to make acorn bread, and she most graciously gave me the roasted acorns. Do you have the little Ziploc?
You need to stand next.
Oh, yeah, I'll stand right next to you. Here's the acorn flour.
She gave me some acorn flour, which I'm thankful, so I didn't have to do it myself. And it only calls for 1/2 cup, so it doesn't take that much to give it a good nutty flavor. And so when you make the dough, I Googled a recipe online called acorn bread, and it was from a website called In the Kitchen with Matt. Well, now we're in the kitchen with Kim and Holly. So I did tweak it just a little bit. For the most part, though, I followed the recipe to a T.
So we'll give them this link.
Yes, the acorn bread link. And so basically it's making any type of yeast bread. And so it's not really a quick bread, even though it does have some sugar in it, a little brown sugar and a little bit of honey. But this is the bread. And last year when COVID hit, and a lot of people I know probably were making homemade bread at home, I kind of splurged and got these bowls. They're called Banneton bowls. And they come with a nice muslin little cloth that goes into the bowl. So you can cover the bowl, and then when your flour goes to raise, you can do it and then dump it out. And what's the fun part is you can use a little razor blade. This is official. I'm not sure what it is to do bread.
Is it
So
sharp?
It's sharp. Mine's kind of rusty because I've used it a lot. Probably didn't clean it like I should have.
Mhm.
But
Let me hold it up so folks can
yes,
see it a little bit
it's
better.
And what's
Just
it called exactly?
you can
It's a
score
bread-
bread with it. You know, if
Is
you
it a
go-
bread scorer?
A bread scorer. So
Okay.
I guess if you go to a bakery or something and you see all the fancy designs on a bread, that once when it does its last rise, right before you put it in the oven, it has flour over top that you put in the bottom of the bowl. So when you dump the dough out, you can score it. This one I tried to do like a leaf and just like a little half moon.
I love
And
that.
so when it's fresh out of the oven, you can really see the nice contrast of the crusty bread with the white. And it
I'll
looks
put a
really pretty.
picture.
Yeah, I took a picture of the process, but basically it's following the recipe. It's just calls for water, yeast, and sugar, and you kind of let that diffuse so it's kind of foamy, and then you add in your flour. And then a reminder, if you do try this, if it calls for like 3 cups of flour, whenever you make yeast bread, do not put all the flour in at once because you don't want it too stiff. You want to just keep adding the flour a little at a time. And it does rise for about 1.5 hours, and let it punch it back down. And that's when you put it in the bowl for another hour to rise and then bake it. And I like to bake mine for the first 10 minutes in a cast iron Dutch oven. I don't know if you have
I
one.
do.
But I put parchment paper in the bottom so you can like lift it into the bread, into that Dutch oven, let it bake. It just kind of lets it that quick
Yeah.
rise. Then I turn the oven back down to 350. It starts at 425 and then bake it for the rest 20 minutes. So the recipe does say 20 to 25 minutes. It's pretty good. And I use a thermometer because I've learned, how do you know when your bread's done? You hate to do all this work and you've overdone it and it's dry, or it's not done enough and it's doughy, gooey.
Can I use a candy thermometer?
Sure. Yeah, anything. And so I just pull it off, turn it on, and the inside, probably still see the little hole, is 190. So your bread should be about 190 degrees when you check it. Like the first time I checked mine, it was 185, and I thought, oh, it could be doughy. So I just shut the door, let it cook 3 or 4 minutes. Then I checked it, and it was right up to 190. So I find it very helpful because sometimes you can guess, or if it's, if you pick up the loaf of bread when it's fresh out of the oven, you can kind of hear that. that's done. You know, if it's too dense or too dry, you want a good, nice little click. So
What kind of flour did you use for the other part?
I just use regular bread flour,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sweetened. It does call for, the recipe calls for 1/3 cup of sugar, but I did less, more like 1/4, because it also calls for 2 tablespoons of honey.
Oh,
So I used some local honey.
okay.
And so we had
So it's
local
more of a
Acorn flour.
sweet bread then.
It's a sweet bread, but it's still a yeast bread. So
Okay.
it's not like, you know, when you get a pumpkin muffin and it's kind of real bready and sugary. So
Yeah.
it should be a good nutty flavor.
Awesome.
nutty
Yeah.
cocktail.
Could I
So-
have used gluten-free flour?
Probably it might have not risen as much.
Mm.
I haven't baked a lot with gluten-free flour, but I'm sure you could do some combination.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, that's just beautiful.
Yeah, so
Can't wait to try it.
oh, good, me too.
Awesome. All right. So then we're going to take these chestnuts
Mhm.
and pour them into the top of the, push that down. And then I have some oil here.
Oops, I think
That's fine. Just let it there. And then you can put as much oil in as you think you need.
Let me know before you
We
start
have no idea. It's okay, you guys. Just close your ears. You'll be fine.
I can mute your mic. I'll do that.
And I want to get some water too. Hold on, hon.
we're making chestnut butter.
Yes. So I have no idea how much water to put in, but let's just throw in
About
whatever. And then we have some salt because I want to make this kind of like a peanut butter or an almond butter. Just put it in your hand.
Is this what's
No
mixed
idea.
in with it?
Oh, this is just Redmond sea salt.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's good salt.
Because you can always add salt, but you can't take it out, right?
This is true.
All right.
So you could probably make this butter really sweet, like, add some molasses to it or, make it for like a dip for apples or something. But I wanted this to be like a peanut butter. It's just chestnut butter to have with our jellies and jams. So go ahead and get started.
I'm pulsing.
Go. Oh, it's kind of like a chunky almond butter. It looks like it's a little bit too
kind
wet.
of chunky. Chunky butter. You think it needs more liquid?
Yeah. We're going to mess with this after class so that we can, we'll have it for our lunch, but we don't want to take up any more of class. Honestly, if you've done this and you know what I'm doing wrong or whatever, let me know. Send me a recipe or tell me, but it tastes wonderful. I love chestnuts. Okay, so take your tea. This is yours, I think. And then here's a basket that you can score. And here's the knife. I would not recommend the knife. And I have do you see I've got a cooking, and I would use this.
Gotcha.
And don't forget your coffee. All right. There's so many things you can do with the chestnuts. So, I wanted to show you, I've been really working on all the wild fruits that have been out there. So I'll bring it over to show you real quick. I have made a lot of fruit leathers this week as well. So this is an autumn olive berry jam that I made. This is a wild grape jam. So Kim, need to think about which one you want with your lunch.
Okay.
And this is a blackberry jam. Look how dark it is. And I made that back in July when that was out. And this is the best. This is the crabapple. Look how beautiful that is. This is crabapple jelly. And crabapple is so high in pectin. So if you've got a crabapple near you, you need to collect a ton of it, make a lot of crabapple applesauce that you could then use with any thinner berry to make a fruit leather with, which is how I make my fruit leathers. Okay. So whoops, is that Max? What's he up to?
Yeah.
Let me get my glasses on so I can see. All right, let's befriend this plant, okay? So it has a reputation, and I'd like you to write down what you think that reputation is. Just give me an adjective. Prickly might be one of them. But if you could write that in the comments, that would be amazing. If you've had experiences with chestnuts, I'd love to hear your experiences. Lots of good memories, I'm sure, if you were a child growing up near a chestnut tree. Probably not so great if you had to mow the lawn after the fall when these burrs are all over the ground. But some of the things I thought of for the reputation is heroic, legendary, bountiful. It's been called the redwoods of the East Coast, only with a perk because they have an edible nut. And it's also been called the divine gift, or God's acorn. I love that. It's in the Fagaceae family, which is the beech family. And that was what the acorn was in. The oaks are in the beech family as well as the beech, of course. And that's the Fagaceae family. We talked about the history and the folklore a little bit. There's so much more. I'm going to give you links to documentaries about this amazing tree. The name is Castanea dentata. That's the American. But the American is no longer around, as I told you. So what this is right here is the Chinese chestnut tree, which is the Castanea mollissima. And then there's a European chestnut called the Castanea sativa. And so what does it look like? So let's go ahead and look at the leaves. And the leaves have very sharp margins, kind of like prickly margins. Let me see if I can read to you a little more clearly how to describe these leaves. I'm not sure where I put that. Okay, so it has, look at how parallel those veins are, and just so distinct to see that midrib in the back. The way that you really can tell, and look at how waxy they are. The feel is very waxy. So if you were blindfolded and you feel different leaves, you could definitely feel the waxiness of this leaf, and you could feel the pointiness of the margins, and you could definitely tell the burrs and how prickly those are. The flowers are interesting. Remember, I told you that there are these catkins that hang down like witches' fingers, and they're white, and they have that aroma that is really pungent and kind of hard to handle. Let's see. Here it is. The flowers follow the leaves appearing in late spring or early summer. They are arranged in long catkins of two kinds, with both kinds being borne on every tree. Some catkins are made of only male flowers, which mature first, and each flower has 8 stamens. That's the male part, stamen. The ripe pollen carries a heavy, sweet odor that is unpleasant. That's putting it mildly. Other catkins have these pollen-bearing flowers, but also carry near the twig from which these spring small clusters of female or fruit producing the flowers. And here's how the burrs are created. So listen to this. 2 or 3 flowers together form a 4-lobed prickly clavium. Plural is clavia, which ultimately grows completely together to make a brown hull or husk, which covers the fruits, which are inside. So this is the husk. And it's very smooth and almost like a soft bedding inside for these husks that were in there. And then the fruits. So there's a couple of trees that are lookalikes, but they're poisonous. So there's the horse chestnut, and I put a picture of that on my slideshow, and that has a completely different looking husk. The actual nut itself is, much more, I have never seen it because I don't have a horse chestnut tree near me. If you all have one and you live here in the high country, I want to come visit your horse chestnut tree, so let me know. But the Buckeye is another lookalike, and the husks for these are very smooth, and I've got pictures of that in the slideshow as well. And look at how sometimes in the inside of the husk, you'll have just 1 nut, sometimes you'll have 2, sometimes you'll have 3, and depending on the species of the chestnut, you could get up to 7 nuts on the inside. The way you can tell the difference between the Buckeye and the chestnut, sometimes the chestnut can be much bigger than this one, is that the chestnut has a tail on the end, and the Buckeye doesn't have any tail. It's just very, very smooth. So it has the Buckeye there. So Ohio's state tree is the Buckeye. And Isn't it in one of their football, the Ohio State's football mascot is?
Mascot.
Yeah, some guys dress like a Buckeye. I don't
Like
know,
a nut.
like a nut.
Yeah.
Okay, so not edible, but beautiful. So I made a, I'm going to have a wild food feast, my last one, coming up October 23. And we're going to be making Buckeye necklaces at that feast. So you can make the necklaces. They're supposedly an aphrodisiac. I don't know how that would work, but they're not edible. So I'm going to put these down, and later I'm going to have Kim come up, and she's going to try to feel out with her fingers, with her eyes closed, Kim, no peeking, whether she's actually holding a chestnut or whether she's holding a Buckeye. Okay. So we talked about that. So that's, what do you look like? We talked about what it looks like. The Chinese chestnut tree is much, much smaller than the American chestnut. The American chestnut, like I said, can grow up to 100 feet tall and be hundreds of years old. And one of the trees was actually 30 feet in diameter, but would average 6 or 7 and get up to 9, which was not uncommon. But the Chinese chestnut's not that large. So what do you do? Well, it's very, very edible. So when we look at, what does it have to offer? What kind of gifts does it offer? Is it medicinal? Is it useful? Is it practical? It certainly is beautiful. But edibly wise, it's extremely high in nutrition. And I'm going to post what those nutrition facts are in the comments below. I'm not going to bother reading them to you now, but I'll tell you that you can eat them fresh, and they take a very little processing to do. You can roast them over an open fire. You can can them, puree them, preserve them in syrup. You can make bread out of them. They're so high in carbohydrates, and they're very low in fat. And so therefore, they're good for diabetic as well, because they're a low fat, and they're very good and high protein as well. So you can put them in stuffings, puddings, cakes, pies, pasta, polenta. You can make them sweet or savory. They're gluten-free, and you can also make milk out of them. So I'm going to be doing all of those things and posting them in my, when I eventually get my cookbook out, I'll have a chapter on chestnuts, because it certainly deserves one. Okay, so then medicinally, I'm just going to read to you what some of these medicinal uses are, because it's pretty awesome. It's really good for heart health, because they're loaded with magnesium and potassium. And it's anti-aging because it's very high in vitamin C. Good for digestion because they're very high in fiber. Excellent for bone health because of the manganese, which protects against osteoporosis. It's excellent against skin cancer. It helps protect against melanoma. It helps with brain health and brain fog and concentration because it's so rich in B vitamins. So you're getting the nutrition anyway, as I tell you about the medicinal purposes. And that supports your brain. And it's really good for blood pressure because the blood sugars and the fiber in the chestnuts help release this, the blood, the slow release of the sugar into the blood. The chestnuts are a starchy nut, which is so unusual. And anyway, high in nutrition. So you can also make them into mashed potatoes, which is what I'm going to do for one of my dishes for our wild food feast. Okay. And then what do you do useful wise? And this is pretty interesting. Excellent for tanning leather. They're the highest tree without tannin content, I think, is 20%, which is the highest of any tree. So it's excellent for tanning leather. It's an excellent for starch. And so let's see if I can find where I was reading about that so I can get it right. Okay, here it is. So I'll just read it. So the natural tanning for tanning leather, the bark imparts a dark color to the tannin, and it has a high sugar content. Fabric can be starched with a chestnut meal, so you can make a starch out of it. Linen cloth can be whitened with chestnut meal. Leaves and the skins of the husks provide as a hair shampoo, and the tannins can be made into a resin. But the most important thing about it is it's rot-resistant wood. And so it's been used for bridge timbers, for building just about anything, fence posts, One of the things that the actual American chestnut is still being used for is because they're still growing. They just never get tall enough to become a tree, and they never have fruit, but they do coppice. And so they'll send up these straight branches, and those have been absolutely outstanding fence posts. And so there are farms that do just that. And people are working really, really hard on trying to bring back the American chestnut. So you can watch whole documentaries on that. The chestnut tracks were used in the invasion of Normandy in World War II, or World War II, sorry, to get over the sandy beaches. Chestnut truly was a tree that carried people from the cradle to the grave. All right. So I'm going to show on my slideshow right now. And the reason why it takes a lot of time to do that. I was up really late, but the reason I want to is I want you to see what I've been doing in my wild kitchen, what I've been foraging for, what you can be foraging for. And I really want to see you guys participate with me in our contest. This week we have a contest for what's my foraging basket. So just show me what you're foraging for. Show me your chestnuts. Show me another contest is a recipe. Show me something you make with chestnuts. And then the other one is write a poem. And so I can't wait to read what you write for the chestnut poems. So this tree deserves a poem, I believe. So write a poem, and then what else? Oh, the winner of that gets to go foraging with me. No, what we'll do is we'll do a preparation day where we do things together in the kitchen. The winner of this week's gets to go foraging with me. So next time it will be a preparation. So that'll be fun. If you're out of town and you win, I'll send you a wild jelly. So we'll watch our slideshow. Let me know what you think of it. I hope you enjoy it and you can learn what there is to grab now in nature's wave. Walk around and watch. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. Max and I got up this morning to watch the sunrise, and it was so foggy and rainy that we didn't see the sunrise, but the sun is always there behind the clouds. So say hi, Max. Mwah. Anyway, he's my foraging buddy. I'm going to now, let's just take a few minutes and show you what's on my counter here, my wild counter. One more thing I wanted to share about the chestnut husk. So I kind of am a no waste kitchen. I kind of use everything. And so I don't throw these out. I save them and for fire starters or just to throw on the fire. And it's kind of fun to throw in one that hasn't been opened, like a whole one just for the heck of it. And it'll explode in the fire, which is kind of exciting to hear. And, but it just has a crackly, wonderful smell and a wonderful sound to it. So that's just kind of a fun thing to do. Plus, it's good firewood. Okay. What else did I want to share with you? I got the hawthorns, and this week I'm going to be making a hawthorn elixir with honey and brandy. I got these at my dear friend Jenny's on her farm. She had like 5 hawthorn trees, and they were abundant. Usually I go up to Snake Mountain to get them because there's literally thousands of hawthorns up there. I'm learning to preserve lots of things. So that I'll talk about that in just a minute. I made fruit leathers this week. This is autumn olive that I had taken the berries, and I've done many quarts of this, but this is just a part of it. And you see how it separates the red at the bottom. This is the lycopene. And at the top is just more of water. So it constantly is needing to be mixed up. But what I love to do to make jams out of this is I mix it with, like I said earlier, with the pectin from crabapples. And then that'll make a nice thick kind of a slurry that you can make your fruit leather with, which the fruit leather is right here. So I sent out a bunch of fruit leather this week to Jordan, to Justin, and to Meredith. Hi, Meredith, if you watch this. I hope you do. I remember so many wonderful times in nature with you when you were younger. So she's in Prague right now, and they have these edible forests that have been created by the government for the people. So there's all of these woods of all kinds of fruit trees that people can just pick from and just harvest. And she was showing them to me on FaceTime, and I was like, I want to come visit. And there's also a really amazing botanical garden of all the edible plants there in Prague. So anyone want to go on a field trip with me, that would be a fun place to go. Okay, what else do I want to show you? So much going on, as you could see. Don't forget to be out getting the black walnuts. Unfortunately, nuts all seem to happen at the same time. So gather it, collect it, preserve it. And the way you cure chestnuts is you can keep them in sand. You can keep them in the freezer. What people used to do would be rake up huge amounts of them, cover them with chestnut leaves, and cover them with some kind of a burlap or something to protect from squirrels, and then just leave them in the cool of the winter, and they would last for months that way. Just Google it, how to cure nuts, because that's something I'm just learning, and you can learn along with me. Also, keep your scraps because you can make nature scraps. So like I sent Meredith is an au pair for a 8-year-old boy named James, and he's very creative, and she's made lots of forest fairies with me. And this one, I don't remember which one of my wild kids did this, but it's a ring wraith from the Lord of the Rings. And you can see that they used a Buckeye husk for the head and just some bark to hold it together. So I just think that's the coolest thing. And this is, of course, from birch. You know how it has that flaky bark. So I sent her all kinds of nature scraps so that James could make one. And I sent the book Miss Hickory, which is a wonderful book about a little forest angel made out of hickories and all kinds of twigs. And she's alive, and her adventures are kind of fun with all the woodland animals. So I'll give a link to that below as well. Okay, so just wanted to tell you what I'm going to teach on next week. I'm going to talk about being wildly prepared for emergencies. I'm going to talk about what to do with wild edible plants. And you're going to be fascinated with what I do and what you should be doing. And this is the time of year to do it. And I'll explain that in great detail next week. But also Jennifer Hannafin is going to be our guest, and she's going to share just 5 very simple things to do in case the grid goes down because of a storm, or there's always, like last February, was it in Texas of all places, there were ice storms for 2 weeks. Some places were without power. A couple of weeks ago, we had power go down just for an hour. But when it goes down, you don't know how long it's going to be down, and if it's just a temporary thing or if it'll be something more prolonged. So being prepared, the scripture I want to share with you about that is Proverbs 22:3, which says, "The wise man prepares for the difficulties ahead, but the fool goes blindly on and suffers the consequences." So I just want to share the blessings that God's provided for us in any contingency, but to be a little bit wise and prepared for any contingency, I think is just a smart thing to do. And I'm not going to share it in a scary way. I just want to be practical and wise. So I hope that blesses you. October 23rd from 4 to 8 is going to be my Wild Food Feast, the last one of the season. I'll be posting what the menu is. It's going to be amazing. And we'll be cracking open the elderflower wine that we made early in June, and as one of our many, many beverages. And so it'll be delicious, and I hope you all can come. If you are a Patreon member, the cost of that meal, it's $65, but if you're a Patreon member, it's only $35. So support me on Patreon. It would be so helpful, and I would so appreciate it. I really love sharing these things, sharing my passions, lighting wildfires. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and share with your friends.
And share this post with your friends on Facebook.
Yeah, share this post with your friends on Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and make my chestnut butter, and I'll show you pictures of our chestnut butter and jelly sandwiches on Acorn bread. Blessings to you.